The evening mist drifted softly across Maple Hollow as Daniel walked the narrow path behind Willow Street. The air felt cool and gentle, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and early summer leaves. Ahead of him, tucked between two tall cedar trees, stood Mrs. Alder's greenhouse. Its glass panels glowed with a warm golden light from within, turning the structure into a quiet beacon in the fading dusk. Soft silhouettes of plants swayed behind the glass, their shapes moving slowly as if breathing with the evening. Daniel stepped closer. The greenhouse door was slightly ajar, and a thin ribbon of warm air drifted out, carrying the scent of fresh soil, moss, and something faintly sweet. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The warmth wrapped around him immediately. The greenhouse was lit by a series of small hanging lamps, each one casting a gentle amber glow over rows of plants. Ferns, flowering vines, and small potted trees filled the space, their leaves glistening with tiny droplets from the evening mist. Mrs. Alder stood near the center table, adjusting a small watering can. She looked up with a soft smile. "Evening, Daniel," she said. "I thought you might stop by." Daniel returned the smile. "I saw the lights. They looked warm. They always do at this hour," she said. "Plants like a bit of company in the evening." She gestured for him to come closer. Daniel walked toward the center table, where a cluster of small plants sat beneath a low lamp. Their leaves were round and delicate, and each one seemed to hold a faint glow, like tiny lanterns. "These are my lantern plants," Mrs. Alder said. "They brighten at dusk, helps them settle." Daniel leaned in slightly. The glow wasn't bright, just a soft shimmer that made the leaves look warm and alive. The plants seemed to pulse gently, their light rising and falling in slow, calming waves. "They're beautiful," Daniel said. Mrs. Alder nodded. "They're gentle. They don't ask for much. Just a bit of water, a bit of warmth, and someone to sit with them, now and then." She picked up a small misting bottle and sprayed a fine cloud over the lantern plants. The droplets caught the warm light, turning into tiny sparks before settling onto the leaves. Daniel watched the plants respond, their glow deepening slightly, as if they appreciated the attention. "Would you like to help me with the evening care?" Mrs. Alder asked. Daniel nodded. "Of course." She handed him a small cloth and pointed toward a row of glass jars on the shelf. Each jar held a different plant, some with long trailing vines, others with broad leaves that curled gently at the edges. "Just wipe the condensation from the jars," she said. "Keeps the light steady." Daniel moved to the shelf and began wiping the glass. The cloth felt warm in his hand, and the jars were smooth beneath his fingertips. Each plant inside seemed calm, resting in the gentle glow of the lamps. The greenhouse was quiet except for the soft hum of the lamps and the faint rustle of leaves. The warmth, the light, and the slow rhythm of the plants made the space feel peaceful, almost timeless. Mrs. Alder moved through the rows with slow, steady steps, checking each plant with practiced care. She hummed softly, a tune Daniel didn't recognize but found comforting. After a few minutes, she returned to the center table and placed her watering can down. "You know," she said, "plants remember kindness. They grow better when someone tends to them with patience." Daniel nodded. "I think people do too." Mrs. Alder smiled. "That's true." She adjusted one of the lantern plants, turning it slightly so its leaves faced the warm lamp. "Stay as long as you like," she said. "The greenhouse is always calmer in the evening." Daniel looked around the glowing space, feeling the warmth settle into him. The lantern plants shimmered softly. The vines swayed gently, and the lamps cast a peaceful glow across every leaf and stem. He knew he would stay a while. The greenhouse settled into an even deeper quiet as Daniel finished wiping the last of the condensation from the glass jars. The warm lamps hummed softly overhead, casting gentle amber light across the rows of plants. Every leaf seemed to glow with its own calm rhythm, and the lantern plants near the center table shimmered in slow, steady pulses. Mrs. Alder moved toward the long wooden shelf at the back of the greenhouse. Daniel followed her, noticing how the air grew slightly warmer near the older plants. The shelf was lined with small pots, each one holding a plant with a different shape, color, or texture. Some had broad leaves that curled like soft waves. Others had thin stems that swayed lightly in the warm air, and a few had blossoms that glowed faintly under the lamps. "These are my memory plants," Mrs. Alder said quietly. "Every one of them came from someone in Maple Hollow. They carry stories in their roots." Daniel stepped closer. The shelf felt different from the rest of the greenhouse. The plants here seemed older, calmer, as if they had been tended for many years. Their leaves moved slowly, almost thoughtfully, in the warm air. Mrs. Alder picked up a small pot with pale green leaves. "This one came from Mr. Penwell," she said. "He found it growing behind the old clock shop," said it. Reminded him of quiet evenings spent repairing pocket watches. She set the pot down gently and picked up another. This one held a trailing vine with tiny white blossoms that glowed softly under the lamp. "And this one," she continued, "was brought in by the librarian years ago. It grew near the window where she used to read in the evenings. She said the plants seemed to enjoy the stories." Daniel smiled. "I like that." Mrs. Alder nodded. "Plants listen more than people think." She moved to a small table near the center of the greenhouse. On it sat a single lantern plant that glowed a little brighter than the others. Its leaves were round and smooth, and the light inside them pulsed gently, like a tiny heartbeat. "This one needs a bit of care tonight," she said. "Would you help me repot it?" Daniel nodded. "Of course." Mrs. Alder handed him a small wooden scoop and pointed to a shallow tray of soil. The soil was warm and soft, with a faint scent of moss, rain, and something sweet he couldn't quite place. "Just a little at a time," she said. "Lantern plants like slow movements. They settle better when you take your time." Daniel scooped a small amount of soil and gently added it around the base of the plant. The lantern plant responded with a soft deepening of its glow, as if appreciating the attention. The light rose and fell in slow waves, matching the calm of the greenhouse. Mrs. Alder steadied the pot while Daniel worked. Her hands were gentle, moving with the kind of care that comes from years of tending to quiet things. She brushed a bit of soil from the rim of the pot and adjusted the lamp above them, so the light fell evenly across the leaves. "You know," she said softly, "plants feel the pace of your hands. If you move slowly, they settle. If you rush, they worry." Daniel smiled. "I think I understand." They continued working together, adding soil little by little. The greenhouse felt even warmer now, the lamps casting a soft amber glow across the leaves and glass. The lantern plant's light pulsed in a steady rhythm, matching the slow, peaceful movements of their hands. When they finished, Mrs. Alder stepped back and looked at the plant. Its glow was steady and warm, like a tiny lantern resting in the quiet of the greenhouse. "There," she said. "It's ready for the night." Daniel watched as she picked up a small misting bottle and sprayed a gentle cloud over the newly repotted plant. The droplets sparkled in the warm light before settling onto the leaves. The lantern plant glowed a little brighter, its light rising in a soft wave that made the surrounding plants shimmer in response. Mrs. Alder placed the misting bottle down and walked slowly toward the front of the greenhouse. She paused near a row of tall ferns, adjusting one of the lamps so its light reached the lower leaves. "The evening's getting deeper," she said, "but the greenhouse stays warm. Plants like the quiet, it helps them rest." Daniel nodded, feeling the gentle glow of the lantern plants around him. The warmth, the soft light, the slow rhythm of the plants, it all blended into a peaceful quiet that made the world outside feel distant and still. He looked around the greenhouse, taking in the rows of plants, the warm lamps, and the soft mist that hovered in the air. The space felt alive in a gentle, comforting way, as if every leaf and stem was part of a quiet conversation he was just beginning to understand. Mrs. Alder returned to the center table and gave him a small smile. "You're welcome to stay as long as you like." Daniel knew he would. The night outside could wait. As the evening deepened, the lamps casting soft amber light across every leaf and stem. Daniel stayed near the center table for a moment, watching the newly repotted lantern plant glow in slow, steady pulses. Its light rose and fell like a quiet breath, filling the space with a calm that seemed to settle into the air itself. Mrs. Alder moved toward the back of the greenhouse again, her steps slow and steady. Daniel followed, noticing how the mist outside had thickened, turning the glass panels into soft, hazy shapes. The world beyond the greenhouse looked blurred and distant, as if the night had wrapped the structure in a gentle cocoon. She stopped beside a tall shelf filled with small wooden boxes. Each box had a tiny brass latch and a handwritten label on the front. Some labels were faded, others freshly written, but all carried names Daniel recognized from Maple Hollow. "This," she said softly, "is the memory shelf." Daniel stepped closer. The boxes were arranged neatly, each one holding something small and quiet. Mrs. Alder opened one of the boxes and revealed a tiny dried blossom, pale and delicate, resting on a square of soft cloth. "This came from Mrs. Harrow," she said. "She brought it in years ago. Said it reminded her of her mother's garden." She closed the box gently and opened another. Inside was a small smooth stone with a faint green tint. "And this one," she continued, "was found near the creek behind Birchwood Lane. Mr. Linton brought it in. He said the stone felt warm when he held it." Daniel looked at the boxes, feeling the quiet weight of the stories they held. The greenhouse wasn't just a place for plants. It was a place where memories lived, tucked gently into soil and leaves and small wooden boxes. Mrs. Alder closed the box and turned toward a row of tall ferns. Their fronds reached upward, brushing lightly against the warm air. She adjusted one of the lamps so its light fell evenly across the leaves, then stepped back to admire the soft glow. "Plants remember kindness," she said. "They grow better when they're surrounded by gentle things." Daniel nodded. "I think people do too." Mrs. Alder smiled. "That's true." She walked toward a small table near the far corner of the greenhouse. On it sat a collection of tiny glass bottles, each filled with a different shade of liquid: pale gold, soft green, warm amber. The bottles caught the lamplight, turning into tiny glowing shapes. "These are my oil blends," she said. "I make them for the lantern plants. Helps them keep their glow." Daniel watched as she picked up one of the bottles and held it to the light. The liquid inside shimmered softly, swirling in slow, gentle patterns. This one is made from cedar and evening blossoms," she said. "It's calming, good for plants that need a bit of rest." She set the bottle down and picked up another. This one held a pale green liquid that seemed to glow faintly. "And this," she continued, "is for the memory plants. Helps them stay steady." Daniel looked around the greenhouse, taking in the rows of plants, the warm lamps, and the soft mist that hovered in the air. The space felt alive in a gentle, comforting way, as if every leaf and stem was part of a quiet conversation he was just beginning to understand. Mrs. Alder picked up a small brush and dipped it into one of the bottles. She moved to a lantern plant near the center table and gently brushed a bit of the oil onto the leaves. The plant responded with a soft deepening of its glow, the light rising in a slow wave that made the surrounding plants shimmer in response. Daniel watched the glow spread through the greenhouse, touching each plant in turn. The light moved slowly, like a warm breeze drifting through the space. Mrs. Alder stepped back and let the glow settle. "There," she said, "they're ready for the night." Daniel felt the calm of the greenhouse settle into him again, the warmth, the soft light, the slow rhythm of the plants. It all blended into a peaceful quiet that made the world outside feel distant and still. He walked slowly between the rows, letting his fingertips brush lightly against the leaves. Each plant felt warm, alive, and gentle. The lantern plants shimmered softly, their glow rising and falling in steady waves. Mrs. Alder returned to the center table and gave him a small smile. "You're welcome to stay as long as you like." Daniel nodded, feeling the gentle glow of the lantern plants around him. The greenhouse felt like a safe, quiet place where time moved slowly, and everything softened into calm. He knew he would stay a little longer. The greenhouse had settled into its deepest quiet of the night. The warm lamps glowed softly overhead, casting gentle amber light across every leaf and stem. Outside, the mist had thickened into a soft veil, turning the world beyond the glass into a blur of muted shapes and drifting shadows. Inside, everything felt still, warm, and peaceful. Daniel stood near the center table, watching the lantern plants pulse in slow, steady waves. Their glow rose and fell like calm breathing, filling the space with a gentle rhythm that made the air feel even softer. The newly repotted lantern plant glowed a little brighter than the others, its leaves shimmering with a warm, steady light. He let his hand rest lightly on the edge of the table, feeling the faint warmth radiating from the plant. The glow reflected softly across the glass jars nearby, turning their surfaces into tiny mirrors of amber light. The greenhouse felt alive in a quiet, comforting way, as if every plant was settling into its nighttime rhythm. Mrs. Alder moved quietly through the rows, checking each plant with slow, practiced motions. She adjusted a lamp here, brushed a leaf there, and paused occasionally to listen to the soft rustle of the greenhouse settling into the night. Her steps were gentle, barely disturbing the warm air. She returned to Daniel with a small wooden box in her hands. The box was simple, with a smooth lid and a tiny brass latch. She opened it gently, revealing a small lantern plant cutting nestled inside a bed of soft moss. The cutting glowed faintly, its tiny leaves pulsing with a delicate light. "This is for you," she said softly, "a little lantern plant to take home." Daniel looked at the cutting. It was small, gentle, and warm, like a tiny ember resting in the moss. The glow was faint but steady, rising and falling in slow waves that made the box feel warm in his hands. "Are you sure?" he asked. Mrs. Alder nodded. "It's ready, and I think it will do well with you. Lantern plants like calm homes. Yours is one of the calmest in Maple Hollow." Daniel felt a quiet warmth settle into him. He lifted the box carefully, feeling the faint heat of the tiny plant through the moss. "Thank you," he said. Mrs. Alder smiled. "Just remember to mist it in the evenings, and keep it near a warm lamp. It will glow brighter when it feels cared for." Daniel nodded. "I will." She walked with him toward the greenhouse door. The lantern plants shimmered softly behind them, their glow rising in a gentle wave that seemed to follow their steps. The warm air drifted around them, carrying the scent of soil, moss, and faint blossoms. Mrs. Alder paused near the door and looked out at the misty night. The path leading away from the greenhouse was barely visible, softened by the drifting fog. The lamps inside cast a warm glow through the glass, turning the greenhouse into a quiet beacon in the darkness. "It's a peaceful night," she said. "The kind that makes the world feel softer." Daniel nodded. "It does." She opened the door slowly. A cool wave of mist drifted in, brushing against the warm air inside. The contrast made the greenhouse feel even cozier, like a warm pocket tucked into the quiet night. "Take your time walking home," she said. "Lantern plants like slow journeys." Daniel stepped outside, holding the small wooden box carefully. The mist wrapped around him, cool and gentle, carrying the faint scent of cedar and damp leaves. Behind him, the greenhouse glowed softly, its warm light turning the mist into a golden haze. He walked slowly along the narrow path, the tiny lantern plant glowing faintly in the box. The light shimmered through the moss, casting a soft glow on his hands. Each step felt quiet and unhurried, the night settling around him like a warm blanket. The path wound between tall cedar trees, their branches swaying lightly in the mist. The air was cool but gentle, and the faint glow from the lantern plant made the shadows feel softer. Daniel listened to the quiet sounds of the night, the distant rustle of leaves, the soft drip of water from the branches, and the steady rhythm of his own footsteps. As he walked, the mist shifted around him, drifting in slow waves that made the trees appear and disappear like gentle silhouettes. The lantern plant's glow reflected softly off the mist, creating a small halo of warm light that moved with him. He paused near a bend in the path, letting the quiet settle deeper. The night felt still, almost suspended, as if Maple Hollow itself was resting. The lantern plant pulsed gently in the box, its glow rising in slow waves that matched the calm of the evening. Daniel continued toward Willow Street, the mist thinning slightly as he approached the edge of town. Warm lights glowed from a few windows, and the soft outline of the clock shop stood quietly at the corner. The town felt peaceful, wrapped in the calm of the evening. He passed the old library, its windows dark but familiar. The lantern plant's glow reflected faintly off the glass, creating a soft shimmer that made the building look warm despite the night. When he reached his cabin, he opened the door slowly, letting the warm air inside drift out to meet the cool mist. The cabin felt quiet and welcoming, its soft lamplight blending gently with the glow from the lantern plant. Daniel placed the wooden box on a small table near his lamp. The lantern plant glowed softly, its light rising in gentle waves that filled the cabin with a warm, calming glow. He adjusted the lamp so the light fell evenly across the tiny leaves, then sat down beside it. The cabin felt peaceful, wrapped in the quiet of the night. The lantern plant's glow shimmered softly, casting warm patterns across the walls. Daniel watched the light for a long moment, feeling the calm settle into him. Outside, the mist drifted slowly across Maple Hollow. Inside, the tiny lantern plant glowed steadily, its light rising and falling in a quiet rhythm that matched the gentle pace of the evening. Daniel closed his eyes, letting the warmth of the glow settle around him. The night outside could wait.